In the gleaming corridors of a global logistics headquarters in downtown Atlanta, a woman many never noticed changed everything with a single sentence. A janitor, black, quiet, overworked, answered a call in perfect German. The CEO heard it. His expression shifted from distracted indifference to stunned curiosity. What began as another underpaid shift for Annika James would unravel long-held assumptions, reveal hidden excellence, and ignite a quiet revolution in a place that had forgotten how to see. The morning air smelled of metal and bleach as Annika James pushed her cart down the marble hallway, the wheels squeaking under the weight of routine. 5:32 a.m., and the city hadn't yet yawned awake. Her sneakers were frayed around the edges, soles patched with glue, and the sleeves of her cleaning uniform were damp from wiping down the downstairs cafeteria before the staff arrived. She moved with quiet efficiency, barely noticed, barely acknowledged. The building was slick with glass and ambition, its floors polished to a cold perfection. 8 stories of executives, finance departments, IT labs, and legal offices. Above it all, Daniel Lowry's office, CEO, founder, clean cut in his tailored suit, sat like a crown jewel on the 8th floor. But down here, on B2, the sublevel with the storage closets and mop sinks, there were no suits. Just Annika. Just bleach and time cards. By 9:10 a.m., the energy had changed. Upstairs, boardroom tension leaked through the ceiling. A translator had missed their flight from Frankfurt. The morning's conference with European partners was minutes away from collapsing. Angry German voices bled through the speakerphone in the assistant's hands. Pacing, emails, calls. We just need someone to stall. Tell them we'll call back. An intern with a bad hangover and worse judgment took the call, and mistaking a custodian for a secretary, walked down 2 floors and handed his buzzing phone to Annika. "Just say we'll call them back," he muttered, already walking away. She stared at the device in her gloved hand, lips parting slightly. Then, without thinking, Annika lifted the phone and answered. Her voice, low and careful, spilled out in a fluid wave of German. "Guten Morgen. Entschuldigen Sie die Verspätung. Wir haben technische Schwierigkeiten, aber ich versichere Ihnen, jemand wird Sie in Kürze zurückrufen." The man on the other end paused, then responded. A conversation began. Not long. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Calm. Precise. Smooth. Upstairs, Daniel Lowry stood in the doorway of the conference room, frozen. He could hear her. Every syllable. His own German was decent. He spent a semester in Heidelberg. But what he heard was more than proficiency. It was poise, tone, cadence, native-level fluency, possibly Berlin dialect. And it was coming from the janitor who'd silently emptied his trash bin for the last 4 years. "Who was that?" he asked. The secretary blinked. "Annika, I think. Downstairs staff." Lowry didn't answer. He was already moving. He found her 10 minutes later, kneeling beside a supply bucket in the lower-level restroom, sleeves pushed up, scrubbing tile grout with practiced hands. She didn't hear him at first. "Excuse me," he said, voice steady. "That call just now. That was you?" She looked up, not startled, just still. Her gloves were dripping, her cheeks flushed from effort. "Yes," she said. "You speak German?" "Yes." "How fluent?" Annika stood, peeled off one glove. Fluent enough to read Nietzsche in the original. Fluent enough to argue with a bureaucrat over visa paperwork. Fluent enough to pass the Goethe-Zertifikat C2 without blinking. Daniel blinked for her. There was a silence that seemed to stretch forever between them. Then he said, "Come upstairs. I need 5 minutes of your time." She hesitated. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in defiance, but defense. People didn't usually ask her for time. They took it. "I'm not dressed for a meeting." He nodded. "Then we'll talk somewhere quiet." In a windowless storage room that had once served as an IT break closet, Daniel asked questions. Not aggressively, curiously, gently. Annika answered, yes. She'd studied linguistics. Howard University. Double minor in German and African American studies. Yes, she'd dropped out. Family circumstances. Her mother's sudden stroke. A sister in high school. Bills. Rent. And then a child of her own. Life happened. "I've applied to over 40 admin jobs in the last 3 years," she said, voice steady. "Never got a second call, so I kept cleaning." Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask why she never brought it up. He knew why. People like him didn't listen unless they already believed you were important. "There's a meeting in an hour," he said after a pause. "With our German partners. No translator. I want you in the room, not as a cleaner. Just an observer. But if it comes up, would you step in?" She studied his face, calculating. Not the offer. She'd heard offers before, often laced with pity or performance. But this one was clean, functional. Still, she asked, "What's in it for me?" He didn't flinch. A seat at the table. Even just one meeting. That's how it starts. That's how it starts. The meeting began at 11:03. Glass walls, whiteboards filled with diagrams, coffee in reusable company mugs. Annika sat at the end. Unnamed. Unacknowledged. The Germans arrived terse and tired. 3 men. 2 women. All in Navy. All unimpressed. Their lead, Herr Schneider, launched into a firm critique of the company's handling of international shipments. The interpreter Lowry had called in last minute wasn't due until noon. At 11:08, Annika spoke. "Entschuldigen Sie, Herr Schneider, wenn ich kurz unterbrechen darf." Every head turned. Her tone was calm. Her German flawless. Schneider stared. "Und wer sind Sie?" he asked. "Annika James," she said. "Sprachassistentin. Nur vorübergehend." There was a pause, then a nod, a shift. She continued. Within minutes, the tension melted. Annika didn't just translate. She interpreted. She shifted tone, mirrored expressions, explained subtext. She joked lightly, corrected a phrasing that would have implied negligence when the team had meant oversight. By 11:42, the German side was smiling. "Endlich jemand, der uns wirklich versteht," one murmured. Finally, someone who understands us. The meeting ended with tentative agreements and a handwritten thank you note from Schneider himself. As Annika stood to leave, Lowry caught up with her in the hallway. "That was remarkable," he said. She nodded. "I just did what I know how to do." "And you've been cleaning floors for 4 years." She smiled faintly. People don't usually look twice at someone holding a mop. He paused. "Would you let me look again?" Annika tilted her head. "That depends. Are you really seeing now? Or just surprised I can speak?" They locked eyes for a moment. Something old and heavy shifted in the space between them. Power, recognition, history. "I'd like to talk more," he said. About what's next. Annika looked down at her hands, still marked from bleach and effort, then up again. I'm listening. The hallway felt different the next morning. Annika noticed it in the way people paused mid-step when she walked by. How whispers dipped and eyes trailed after her long after she'd passed. She had come in early, habit more than necessity, and had changed into a fresh uniform anyway, not quite ready to abandon the rhythm that had defined her for the last 4 years. The mop handle still fit naturally in her hand. So did the silence. Daniel Lowry had asked her to meet upstairs again, but the details had been vague. Let's talk next steps, he'd said the previous afternoon, his eyes clear but cautious. He didn't want to make promises. Not yet. She respected that. At 8:57 a.m., her badge beeped at the executive elevator for the first time. The sound startled even her. She stepped in alone. On the 6th floor, a no-man's land between executive operations and client services. She found a temporary desk with a nameplate that hadn't been there yesterday. Annika James, language support consultant. Below it, a laminated tag. Temporary. Assignment. She stood there for a beat, her fingers hovering over the edge of the desk. The surface was clean, unused, a blank slate. Still, something tightened in her chest. Consultant. Not cleaning staff. Not assistant. It wasn't permanence, but it wasn't invisibility either. Daniel met her 5 minutes later with a cup of coffee and an email printout. Just got confirmation, he said. Schneider wants you included on the next round of calls. Not as backup. He asked for you by name. Annika blinked. He remembered my name. Daniel smiled. He said, the woman who actually listened. That's better than a resume, if you ask me. They moved into a smaller conference room down the hall, and Annika found herself seated across from 3 senior managers, men in stiff collars and tighter opinions. One of them, Drew Wallace from International Strategy, looked her up and down with faint disdain. His smile didn't reach his eyes. She's just here for the language, Daniel said, sensing the tension. Her insight's going to help us move forward. Annika said nothing. She didn't smile either. The meeting that followed was technical, focused on restructuring a client-facing document in both German and French. Annika read in silence for 10 minutes, then quietly cleared her throat. Snurry. This phrasing here, she pointed, when translated to German reads as failure to meet protocol. But the original English meant preference for alternative logistics. You're going to insult them by accident. Wallace's eyes flicked to hers. I'm sorry. What exactly is your background again? 4 years of practical multilingual application, specializing in real-time code switching and intercultural linguistics, Annika said smoothly. And 12 years of listening to people talk past each other without realizing it. Silence. Then Daniel coughed into his hand to hide a grin. Later, in the hallway, Wallace muttered to no one in particular. We're just handing out job titles now. Annika heard it. She kept walking. By noon, she was back at her desk. A few curious glances floated her way, especially from the newer hires who didn't yet know the office politics. One intern, Devon, according to his badge, stopped at the kitchenette beside her and offered a tentative, "That thing you did yesterday, that was cool." Annika thanked him quietly. Just did what needed to be done. Still, he said, it made me look up Goethe quotes after work. He shrugged. I don't even like poetry. She laughed gently. Me neither, but sometimes it's the only way to say what matters. At 2:30 p.m., Daniel called her into his office again. His tone this time was different, more formal. A thin folder sat on his desk. "I've been reviewing your file, your resume, the transcripts, the letters from Howard. Honestly, I'm embarrassed we didn't see it sooner." "You didn't look," Annika said, not bitter, just factual. Daniel nodded. "You're right." There was a long pause. "I want to offer you something," he said finally. "A 6-week trial as linguistic advisor, full salary, access to translation software, client meetings, development sessions. You won't be cleaning during that time." Annika raised an eyebrow. "So I'm still temporary?" "You are, for now, but not invisible." She didn't answer immediately. Then, "I'll accept, but not if it's a handout." "It's not," Daniel said. "It's overdue." The next few days moved fast. By the end of the week, Annika had logged over 40 hours of document analysis, rewritten 8 international contract templates, corrected major translation errors from 2 separate vendor agreements, and was quietly CC'd into a half-dozen executive-level threads. But change never comes clean. The whispers came first. "She's not even certified. Guess you don't need degrees anymore. Just a mop and a miracle. She's probably just a diversity hire." Annika heard it all. In the copy room, in the elevator, once, even in the restroom stall next to hers. But none of it stuck the way it used to. She remembered the look on Schneider's face when she translated his frustration into something actionable. She remembered her daughter's voice the night she came home and said, "Mommy, do they know how smart you are now?" And she remembered what it felt like to hold the room still, not with power or volume, but with clarity. On Friday, Daniel found her again. This time his hands were in his pockets, his voice softer. "Do you think you'd want to stay?" he asked. "Permanently, as part of the international operations team." She looked at him for a long moment. "If I stay," she said, "it has to mean something, not just for me, but for people like me." Daniel nodded. "Then we'll make it mean something." She stared at the framed map behind him, lines connecting cities, countries, languages. "Then I'll stay," she said. "But I'm not here to be an exception. I'm here to open the door." And from that day forward, the door no longer closed behind her. The new nameplate shimmered faintly in the soft afternoon light. Annika James, Linguistic Advisor, International Affairs Division below it. A smaller plaque read, "First in Program. Not the last." The 6th floor had changed. Quietly, subtly. There was still the hum of screensavers and the soft chatter over keyboards, but now it carried something else too. Attention. Not all of it kind, not all of it earned, but attention nonetheless. Annika adjusted the neckline of her blazer, borrowed from her neighbor until her first paycheck came, and stepped into the open floor workspace with the quiet grace of someone who had spent years learning not to take up too much room, except now she had to. Her first solo assignment was with a French client, an automotive logistics partner from Marseille, known for their rigid etiquette and clipped expectations. The meeting was virtual, but it didn't matter. When the CEO of their firm logged in, eyes squinting with skepticism at the unfamiliar face on the screen, Annika didn't flinch. She greeted him in precise, southern accented French, her voice even and sure. 10 minutes later, they were laughing about translation quirks in regional slang. By the end of the hour, He requested she be their point of contact moving forward. After the call ended, she sat still for a long time, not because she doubted what had happened, but because something in her had finally shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't surviving. She was being seen. Word spread. By the following week, 3 more departments had quietly reached out to borrow her for calls or contract reviews. One even sent over an old stack of rejected resumes and asked, "Can you tell us if we missed anyone like you?" She read every single one. It was during one of those quiet lunch breaks, when most staff left for cafes down the street, and she stayed behind with a thermos of rice and beans, that an idea began to form. A question, really. What if I'm not the only one? That same afternoon, Annika walked into Daniel Lowry's office and made her pitch. "I want to start something," she said. "An internal program. Language training, cultural literacy, mentorship. Not for promotions. Not for show. Just a chance. For people we don't usually look twice at." Daniel leaned back, studying her. "You want to teach classes?" "No," she said. "I want to create space. Others can teach. I'll guide. I just need the room and your support." He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "Do you think people will come?" Annika thought of Devon from the copy room, of Teresa from custodial who practiced English idioms on her break, of the cafeteria worker who hummed in Portuguese while wiping down trays. "They're already here," she said. "They just need to be asked." By month's end, the first flyer went out across all floors. New pilot program. Language after hours. No cost. All levels. All staff. All welcome. 12 people showed up the first week. 26 the next. By the third month, they had to move the sessions to a larger room. Not everyone cheered. A few managers rolled their eyes. Some grumbled about wasted time and soft initiatives. One even called it a distraction. But numbers don't lie. Within the first quarter, miscommunication complaints dropped 30%. Client satisfaction scores from non-English speakers rose. Turnover among junior staff fell for the first time in 4 years. Daniel forwarded the metrics to corporate headquarters with a simple note. "This is what happens when we listen." And people began to listen. One morning, an email from New York arrived. It was brief but unmistakable. "We've been following the impact of your internal pilot. Please prepare a presentation for the National Board on replicating this program company-wide." Annika stared at it for a long time. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of recognition. It felt like standing at the edge of something wide and necessary. At the same time, something quieter was unfolding. The company blog, usually reserved for product rollouts and market highlights, published a feature titled, "The Woman in the Basement Who Spoke Truth in German." The post went viral internally, then externally. Emails trickled in, then flooded, from a janitor in Phoenix who spoke 5 languages and never told anyone. From a cafeteria worker in Ohio whose mother was a linguist in Nairobi. From a mailroom assistant in LA who taught himself Arabic during night shifts. Then, one day, a small envelope arrived at Annika's desk. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "I'm a hotel maid in Charlotte. My daughter speaks fluent Korean. I never thought it mattered. Then I read about you. Thank you for showing me it does." There were no instructions, no ask. Just gratitude folded into a moment. 1 month later, the company announced the Open Door Fund, a scholarship program for frontline employees pursuing professional development. language studies, certifications, community college courses. No strings attached, just belief. Anika sat in the back during the launch event, dressed simply, her hair pulled back. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her story was already doing that. And on the day she moved into her new office, real wood desk, glass door, her name in clean black lettering, she paused. She stood in the hallway just before entering, catching a reflection in the glass. Not smiling, just steady, solid. Behind her, a former co-worker from janitorial passed by and slowed. "This your new spot?" Annika nodded. "Looks like it." The woman grinned. "Good. You belong here." That night, Annika stayed late. She didn't have to. She just wasn't ready to leave. The office was quiet, empty. She stood by the window and looked out at the city, lights flickering like languages across the skyline. And somewhere, deep in her bones, she understood. She hadn't just translated words. She had translated worth. What began with a phone call in German had become something else entirely. A new vocabulary for what was possible, not just for her, for all of them.